Welcome, y'all. It's the astronumerologist Jazz Aphrodite, your favorite astronumerologist, coming to you to break down the semi-fixed cards. So let's get into it. The first semi-fixed card is the Ace of Clubs, and the Ace of Clubs sits on the grand solar spreads in Mercury and Venus. Mercury is the planet of communication, teaching, and learning, and Venus is the planet of love. So rightfully so, the Ace of Clubs loves to learn. It loves new ideas. It's the card of new projects, new ideas, new accomplishments, new goals. And Ace of Clubs is also looking for new ventures. Now, if you look at its supporting and challenging karma cards, it's the same. It's the Two of Hearts. And this is how you know that this card is a semi-fixed card. This card moves between the Ace of Clubs and its twin, the Two of Hearts, which sits Venus Neptune. And so sitting in Venus Neptune, this card is more about love and spirituality. The Two of Hearts is looking for long-term love relationships, being in partnerships, being in love, but also don't be fooled because the Two of Hearts is the card of the mogul and the billionaire. And so with this Venus energy, it is looking to attract love, attract wealth, but with that Neptune, sometimes things may be murky. They may not see things clearly. Spiritual work is necessary to achieve the end goal. Now, the Neptune card to the Ace of Clubs is the Seven of Diamonds, and the Seven of Diamonds sits Venus, Venus. And this is the card of the millionaire. This is the card of spiritual values, of spiritual money. This card attracts a lot of attention, a lot of wealth, a lot of fame, a lot of acclaim. And sitting in Venus, Venus, Venus is the planet of love. It is how you express your love, your artistry, your beauty. Venus is governed by the number 6, and 6 rules the throat. And so you may be using your voice to get your wealth. You may be using your artistry. 6 is all about art. It's all about beauty. It's all about the home. It's all about achieving balance in things. And so the cosmic twin to the Seven of Diamonds is the Nine of Hearts. And the Nine of Hearts sits Saturn, Saturn. The Nine of Hearts is the card of wish fulfillment. Dreams coming to fruition based on the work that you've done for the 8 years or the 8 cycles previous to this 9th cycle. 9 is the number of completion. So after all the hard work that Saturn requires, you have completed the task and your wish has been fulfilled. Because it's the 9 of Hearts, it also talks about the loss of love because 9 is the number of endings. And sitting Saturn, Saturn, Saturn represents the father. And so this also indicates the loss of fathers or the loss of important male figures in your life. Now, we have our 4 cards. The Ace of Clubs is paired with the Two of Hearts. The Seven of Diamonds is paired with the Nine of Hearts. Now, I wanted to expound upon this and talk about 2 important historical figures. And this topic came to me because there was talk on the internet about whether Jay-Z's hair is real or whether it's a man unit. And I thought that conversation was so funny, but I said I'm not going to indulge in that pettiness. What I will do is look at the inspiration for the hairstyle. And so when we're looking at Jay-Z, he is an Ace of Diamonds, like myself, sitting in Jupiter, Neptune, and the Nine of Hearts is his inspiration. If you know anything about art, you will know that Jean-Michel Basquiat is Jay-Z's inspiration for the hairstyle. And so we're going to see that Jean-Michel Basquiat is a Nine of Hearts, but that is his Saturn card. And so when you have a Saturn card of the Nine of Hearts, what it's saying is Saturn is the great teacher. And Saturn brings maturity. It brings time. It brings patience. Saturn is also the planet of sacrifice, but it pushes people to understand their growth and potential through the hard work, through the hard lessons, and the perseverance. And so Jay-Z channeling Basquiat's energy through the hair is his way of paying homage or also tapping into his energy. So let's see. Jean-Michel Basquiat was born on December 22nd, 1960, and so we're looking for his card. Remember, the formula is 55 minus double the month, The month is December, so that's 24. And then we also subtract the birthday number, which is a 22. And so essentially we're subtracting 46 from 55 and we get a 9. Now, if I look at my table, I know that the ace to the king of hearts is 13, 1 to 13. And then I know from the ace to the king of clubs, that's 14 to 26. The ace to the king of diamonds is 27 to 39, and the ace to the king of spades is 40 to 52. This number is a 9, so it definitely has to be a heart, and so rightfully so, it is the 9 of hearts. And so this is where Basquiat sits on the grand solar spreads, as we saw. Now, going down the rabbit hole and looking into Basquiat, I decided to look at his documentary, and he has one partner, one faithful partner, who he has worked with throughout his life, and they have a 32-year age difference. But it was so interesting to see that his work with Andy Warhol is faded. Andy Warhol was born August 6, 1928. And looking at the formula again, we have 55 minus 16 because we're doubling August, minus the 6, which is 22. So essentially we're subtracting 22 from 55 to get 33. And when I look at my table, 33 is greater than 26, so it's not a clubs. It has to be a diamonds. So I'm just going to subtract 33 from 26 to get the 7 of diamonds. And that's where Andy Warhol sits. And so we see that Jean-Michel Basquiat and Andy Warhol are actually semi-fixed cards. They are cardology twins, which shows and displays a lot about their relationship, about their collaborations, about the way that they understood and revered each other. Remember, everything in this universe, everything in life is predestined. There's a reason and a number and an assignment behind it. And so looking at the way that people reviewed or critiqued their relationship, Warhol's assistant said, "It was like some crazy art world marriage, and they were the odd couple. The relationship was symbiotic. Jean-Michel thought he needed Andy's fame, and Andy thought he needed Jean-Michel's new blood. Jean-Michel gave Andy a rebellious image again." I want you to hone in on that. Jean-Michel thought he needed Andy's fame, and Andy thought he needed Jean-Michel's new blood. We're going to come back to that. The next quote by Keith Haring says, "Jean-Michel and Andy achieved a healthy balance. Jean respected Andy's philosophy and was in awe of his accomplishments and mastery of color and images. Andy was amazed by the ease with which Jean composed and constructed his paintings, and was constantly surprised by the never-ending flow of new ideas. Each one inspired the other to outdo the next. The collaborations were seemingly effortless. It was a physical conversation happening in paint instead of words." So that's very telling to see how these two energies play out in the physical world. And so most of their work together was done between the years of 1984 and 1985. So we're going to look at the spreads for each of them during this time. And so this is Basquiat's spread. He was 24 years of age at the time in 1984. And his supporting karma card was the 9 of hearts. And so during this time, he was inspired by himself. If you know anything about Jean-Michel's work, his work is a combination of Picasso, Jackson Pollock, and he uses a lot of symbolism, what we call semiotics. It is the use of symbols to interpret language or to interpret images, a way of interpreting spiritual concepts. And so he used that in his artwork, and this year you can see that he was heavily influenced by himself. What was challenged to him was Andy. And so Andy, being more of the pop art artist, using trademarks from brands and logos that we're familiar with, he was more of a repetitive artist. He just used that same brand and repeated it on canvas. And so having these two come together was definitely a challenge because their ideas were so disparate, right? And so challenging karma card, Andy Warhol right there. Looking at Warhol's spread, he was 56 in 1984, and he also supported himself. So his supporting karma card was himself. So he too was stuck in his ideas of repeating brands, that pop art culture that amassed a lot of fame and recognition for him. His challenging karma card was Jean-Michel. And so this was the year that they were feeling each other out, trying to get a taste for what it is that they both bring to the table and finding ways to incorporate it. In 1985, however, Basquiat, now 25 years old, is sitting in Andy's house. And so go back to the quote that the assistant said. Jean-Michel thought that he needed Andy's fame. And so he's sitting in his house. He is definitely pulling on Andy's energy, more specifically, Andy's Seven of Diamonds, that millionaire's energy, to get the critical acclaim that he sought, that he thought he needed from being associated with Andy Warhol. And his challenging karma card is himself, of course, grappling with, do I really need to align myself? Do I really need to rely on his wealth? Or should I just trust my own artistic inclinations? And then we have Warhol, who is sitting in Basquiat's house in the Nine of Hearts. So that is his supporting karma card. And this is the year that he's leaning more toward understanding Basquiat's use of the symbols in the work. Remember, the quote said, Andy thought he needed Basquiat's new blood. The Nine of Hearts, the heart suit, is the suit of blood. The heart pumps blood through the ventricles, through the aorta. That's its function. And because the hearts are the babies of the suits, that is new. The babies are looking at life through a fresh pair of eyes. They're excited about all of the possibilities, all of the newness of life. And that's what Warhol was relying upon with Jean-Michel Basquiat. And he too was challenged by himself because, again, he's very strict with the pop art. He understands his fame, what works for him, and of course, letting go of that and acquiesce to the partnership that the two of them had. Now, looking at their names, Jean-Michel Basquiat, just his first name alone, Jean-Michel, is a 33-6 in the Chaldean, a 44-8 in the Pythagorean. The 33-6 is the master teacher. The 44-8 is the master healer. So Jean-Michel is tapped into the cosmos. And so when we talk about his symbols, it has a lot of spiritual meaning because he understood how to incorporate that with art. To the rest of us, to the layman, it looks like it's just a bunch of confusion on the canvas, but I'm pretty sure he was tapped into a higher source and brought those symbols down for those specific images to relay a message that was definitely cosmically influenced. Basquiat, which is the name that he went by, his last name is a 19-1. So 19 is a number of favorable outcomes for the future. Things having good luck, good favor, being the boss of things, but also imposing your ideas on other people. And we're going to look at the Chaldean expression, which is the 52-7. And so this is the number of spiritual truth. 52 is a number that needs to reside in nature to get its rejuvenation, to get its blessings, to get its downloads. 7 is the number of isolation, focusing on your art, expressing your spirituality through your art, and mastering your craft, spending a lot of time in quiet introspection, and then taking those downloads and putting it through your medium, which is the art. 7 is also that Neptune energy, so you know that he was definitely tapped into a higher spirit with that 52-7 expression. Now, Andy Warhol, Andy's an 11, which is the number of the visionary. It is the number of the wounded healer. Warhol, 24-6. His last name is also what they called him, Warhol. That's how people know him. And 24-6 is very key because it shows that his success came from an influential woman. He was heavily influenced by a woman of position and status, and she positioned him to be where he was at that time. 6 is also the number of Venus, which talks about female energies, also the number of the artist. Beauty, balance. His work was very balanced. Now, putting the 11 and 24 together, his expression is the 35-8. And so when we're looking at the 35-8, this is the number of what I call the inheritance. The 35-8 expression is someone who achieves their goals with little to no effort. And remember, 8 is ruled by Saturn, and Saturn usually requires a lot of hard work and effort and lessons. But this 35 is almost like the law of attraction. You think about it and it comes to you. So 35-8, people under this influence can be tyrants because they believe that other people can accomplish the wealth and fame and recognition that they can so easily, but they don't recognize that that 35-8 is working in their favor. Also, with Warhol having that 32-5 in the last name in the Pythagorean side, it talks about joining people from all walks of life, all nations, but also staying true to your ideas and staying true to what you know what works for you. And the 17-8 in Andy in the Pythagorean is talking about building a legacy, being an executive, amassing a great deal of money and fame in your name, living on past your physical existence on this earthly plane. And so you have the 52-7 expression with Jean-Michel Basquiat, the 35-8 expression with Andy Warhol, just looking at the Chaldean now. Interestingly enough, the 7 and the 8 clash. Those two numbers do not see eye to eye, even though they are often around each other. When Andy Warhol and Basquiat came together to create that exhibition with the two of their works together, it was called The Paintings. It wasn't well received because it was a clashing of the juxtaposition of the balanced trademarks with this wild Picasso-esque symbolism. And so coming together, people didn't quite understand what they were looking to achieve with this union. And so that 7 and 8 definitely shows the clashing there. The 7 and 8 definitely demonstrated that that was something that needed to happen spiritually, but probably not commercially. Looking at this relationship definitely opens my eyes, and it's key to see how these cards and these numbers tell a very succinct story. And so when you're looking at the semi-fixed cards, think about who in your life is the energy of the 7 of diamonds, the 9 of hearts, or who you know as the Ace of clubs and the 2 of hearts, and how those relationships play off of each other. Remember, they are cardology, or as I like to say, cosmic twins. So that's my explanation of the semi-fixed cards. See y'all in the next video. Ciao.